welcome to LTL's Midweek Conversation. My name is Delia, and I'm one of the online pastors here at Live.Church. I have Pastor Lisa with me, one of our executive pastors here, and we just want to have a conversation. Our church has been in a conversation for the past few weeks just about society, just different things going on in our nation, in our world. And so we wanted to break some of those down today and hopefully leave you guys with just some really challenging questions just to have conversation with anyone in your home, with your family, anyone in your workplace. And so, Pastor Lisa, what are some of these topic points that we've been hitting over the last few weeks?
Yeah, so the conversation I think originally started with some mentalities and thoughts our society is operating in right now, that we woke up and all of a sudden we're here, and how did we get here? And incredible teaching. And last week they were mentioned again, but they were pretty heavy statements.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to kind of go back over them. We've got 7 statements here. These are like beliefs, a set of beliefs that are surfacing in our society today.
Yeah.
And so these are not necessarily beliefs that we agree with. So we're bringing them to the surface to kind of reveal and expose,
Right.
and then have conversations about it, how we can see that it's seemingly some of them are good, but at the core of what it is, or at the result of what it will
Right.
produce, is so bad. So I'm just going to list them off and then we can talk about them. The first one is that the belief is that the highest good is individual freedom, happiness, self-definition, and self-expression. Another one is traditions, religions received wisdom, regulations, and social ties that restrict individual freedom, happiness, self-definition, and self-expression must be reshaped, deconstructed, or even destroyed. In other words, if you disagree with anything, then now you become an opponent.
Wow.
Number 3, the world will inevitably improve as the scope of individual freedom grows. Technology, in particular, the internet, will motor this progression toward a utopia. Wow. Number 4 is the primary social ethic is tolerance of everyone's self-defined quest for individual freedom and self-expression. Any deviation from this ethic of tolerance is dangerous and must not be tolerated.
Wow.
Number 5, humans are inherently good. I wish we could talk about all of these for a very, very long time.
We've had an hour and a half.
Humans are inherently, they're created in perfectness, but then a fallen world.
Yeah.
That's like, these brownies would be great if you hadn't served them in a poopy pan.
Yeah.
So perfect, yes. Number 6, large-scale structures and institutions are suspicious at best and evil at worst. And there's just that mistrust there for the institutions. But number 7 is forms of external authority are rejected and personal authenticity is solely celebrated.
Yeah.
I mean, just some powerful statements here. Huge, deep conversations. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And as you were reading those, I just, obviously I couldn't help but in every one of those statements, it just seemed like there was just a big emphasis on self, just an emphasis on self, individual freedom. Even like that last one, just very anti-authority or anti-anything that would tell me, just very inward focused. And I just kind of want your thoughts on that. And how do you think that mindset of self not only affects somebody individually, but how do you think it affects somebody like in a family dynamic or even relationally with other people?
Yeah. The problem is that organizationally is what we were created for, is to belong to one another, to invest into one another, to need each other. That's why we don't have all the giftings and all the talents and all the, is because we have strengths and weaknesses that we should depend on each other for. And that happens with an organization. So what is the enemy going to do? He's going to attack the organizations that happens in. So the group is individualized, right? And we know that to be dissension. We know that to be division. We know that to be keep them separated, right? And then if we can do that, then their focus will become on themselves, and that's what we've become.
Yeah.
And so individual mentality is really great. It's just the problem with that, it's not really great, I'm being sarcastic. It's not great at all. The problem with that is that if you individually get to live your life the way you want to live, and it will inevitably infringe upon what my individuality is.
Right.
And then we don't have a corporate. It's just very selfish in its nature. We're so with the idea that we have to that we get to. We have the right to now. We've misinterpreted freedom as a right, and society owes me. I get to be heard, and I get to live the way I want to live and do the things I want to do. But if we apply that rule, that applies to everybody. So individuality is can become. I think that you should be created. I think you should live the life that you were created to live, and according to the plan that you were purposed for.
Right.
But if you don't know what that plan is, then it's your own plan. It's your own selfish desires, you know? Anyway, so destructive. So destructive.
That's so good. And I love that because also when you're so focused on yourself, it's like, how can I think about somebody else? How can I see anybody else's need? Or how can I empathize with other people if I'm, constantly consumed with what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I think is right?
You see them as a product now, or you see them as something that, what can I consume from them?
Right.
What can I
from you?
gain from you? What can I take from you?
Right.
And now you're serving my plan and my purpose.
Right.
And that is so dangerous. Like,
I love that. That's so good. And on point number 2, talking about, traditions and religions and received wisdom, regulations, all of those things. What would you say, because I've been hearing this a lot, even in, my age group of people, the 20 somethings, and it's all about right now, deconstructing and, tearing down things that I've always known and stuff like that. What would you say to that? Is there, can there be good deconstruction? Can there be bad deconstruction? Like what is really the differentiation between the two, and how can we be able to question things and to really ask ourselves real honest questions without swinging the pendulum and thinking that we don't need it altogether?
I think that swinging the pendulum is a really good statement, because I think that's frequently what happens. But deconstruction is not bad with a great intention, because we have to recognize people who are 100 years old did church the way they did because it was befitting for the time, or they did life, or the workplace was the way it was, or the systems and all of that. And, people 50 years old, you know what I mean? I remember first coming in at 30 years old, never going to church, and having a picture of what church is like, and then looking at what it is today, completely different. You're just like, wow, this is crazy. I also see the negative media reports. We don't really hear about the positive, but church is not rarely the circle that we're around. It's just not that. And so I really have to make a conscious effort to be aware of what's going on, but we have to move with the shifts, and we've got to be able to change for the generation that is coming, not because God's word changes, but because the culture changes, and we have to be able to match, combat, guide, lead in that generation and in that culture. So deconstruction, it happens at times. We have to relook at things like, why are we still doing this if it's not producing anything? Why would we still do that? But that doesn't mean to say, if we were to get rid of hymnals, that doesn't mean to say that we can't sing a hymn. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, the anointing's not there. God changed his mind on that song, or no, of course not. Get rid of it. No, there's so much to learn in both directions. We bridge the generations. We believe it, and in both. I've learned so much from the 20-somethings, and even the generation coming after that, the alpha generation. Learning so much, and I would hope, that my generation and above is pouring out into that, into that people group.
And how would you encourage, the generations? I guess, how would you encourage the younger generation to know that, hey, like there's a lot to be learned from people that have come before you? And how would you encourage somebody who is either your age or even older than you to have the open mind to say, like, there's a lot you can learn from the up and coming generation? How would you what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to navigate that, whether they're in either age group? That's
tough. I would find it very difficult for an older person to go up to tell you, you've got a lot to learn from me. I think I'll speak for my generation and say, make yourselves more available. Make yourselves a safe place. Stop screaming about their pants being too low, or a tattoo, or something so like frivolous. Like, it's not important. It's irrelevant. Make yourself available to them to where they even can trust you because you're part of the institution
Yeah.
of tradition. You're part of the institution of church if you're older.
Yeah.
And so make yourself available to that, to where they could ask you, and you can be a safe place for them, and then you can invest in them. To the younger culture, I would say, ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions. Don't ever hesitate, but dig to the deeper roots. Don't come at it like, why does church have to be this? Like, hey, what do I need to know about this, and how can I contribute to something for change for something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. And point 3 is one of those points that talks about social media. It talks about the internet.
Yes.
And I want to pick your brain on this, Pastor Lisa, because we've had some conversations about cancel culture.
Oh, the most passive aggressive weapon on earth right
I know,
now.
like things that you would never say to somebody to their face,
For sure.
but I'll hop on my computer and say it, or I'll type it behind a screen. What do you think about just social media in general? Let's just start there. Social media, there's good and there's bad.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And how do you feel like social media is playing this part in these set of beliefs that we just read? Where do you think social media plays its part in that?
Oh, sure. It totally feeds it. So cancel culture is now a mentality that started.
lifestyle.
It's a
Just
lifestyle,
kidding.
yeah,
For
for
some
sure. For some
people.
people, that started in social media.
Yeah.
And so it's changed the mindset of a society.
Yeah.
So cancel culture.
It's our filter now.
It's our filter now. So if we're looking at somebody through a lens, it creates this separation to where we feel like they're not real people, and so we can just throw
Whatever. Yeah.
anything. And I remember like even making a video before, and like some troll got on there and made a comment, and I was like, you know what I mean? It's not, my feelings were hurt, but I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so like useless. Like, how much pain are you in that you had to do that?
Right.
So for me, I look at it from a perspective that like, if you're doing that, if you're trolling somebody or cancel culture or whatever, you're actually flexing your own insecurity.
Yeah.
Because I think that if we pick our fights on social media, like, man, what a terrible representation and use of what social media is.
Right, because there's some good in social media.
You could do so much good
Yeah.
in social media. You have an opportunity right there at your fingertips to do good despite looking at backlash.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like I'm going to take on the world and I'm going to throw out super whatever controversial responses back to people that have posted something that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
That's still division. Like, you're being punked. Like,
Yeah.
don't fall into that.
Right.
Learn while you're reading, learn from it, get some understanding so you know where you really stand on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And solidify your faith in some of those things. But cancel culture has bled over to real life now. It has passed the screen, right? We can cancel people. We look for motives in people. We're mistrusting of people. We think that everybody's out for something, and now we're behaving the way we behaved online. Some people have taken it to behaving like that up close and in person,
Right.
In person now. And one of the most unhealthiest things that I've ever seen in my life. And the cancel culture, man, they're so busy, canceling the culture that, or not canceling the culture that they've created.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you've created this, and now,
Yeah.
so I cancel cancel culture. So whatever.
Cancel culture is canceled.
Cancel culture, cancel. Yeah, some of it got healthy, but man, it took a spin, wildly out of control.
It did, and it was, and like I said, there is good in it,
Yes,
because
for sure.
I want to throw out there too. We're doing this right now for people
right.
that are watching. That I don't know where you're at. You could be in another state. You could be in another country, and so that's such a blessing that we do have that.
Yeah.
But there is a way that we can navigate social media
Yeah.
in this day and age and be a conduit for good things, and
Yeah.
not for cancel culture, not for those things.
Yeah, and we don't have to, because a person could literally post something, and they could be convicted on it. They could change their mind. They they could study on it that night, and the next day we're still holding them responsible for an answer or a video that they made 10 years ago.
Like if we can't grow and
as if we
change
can't
and
grow.
evolve.
I might have said 3 really dumb things just today, right now. Like it, but
And it's the same
tomorrow's a new
culture.
day.
It's the same culture that'll cancel you for saying something 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but they're encouraging you to grow
Oh,
and
for
evolve
sure.
and
We've
be
seen that.
open-minded.
We've seen that. We've seen celebrities held
insane.
responsible for something that they did or were or said 25 years
they're
ago.
not even that
Some of them
person.
absolutely should be, but there's some
Right.
other things. It's like they said something, you're just like, seriously, is that where we're at? No.
That's so crazy. But and the last thing I want to hit on before we wrap up is on point number 4. It talks about just a tolerance for each person's like specific self-defined quest to whatever personalized freedom, their individuality, stuff like that. And how do you think that that can be navigated, whether it's in the home, in a family dynamic, or if it's just with our relationships and our friendships in general?
Oh, we just going in. Primary social ethic. It's the same thing. We confuse tolerance for acceptance, and we confuse not accepting something as a hate crime, or
Right.
you know what I mean.
I'm coming
And
against.
there's true hate. There is true hate crimes. Seriously.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to I don't want to get too much into that here, but we know what those are.
Yeah.
But then there's other things. If I disagree with you, and we're in this high sensitive culture,
Right.
that if I disagree with you, now it's hate, or
Right.
now it's even like if I speak against it, if I disagree with you verbally, now it's bullying, and you're just
Right.
like, man, we're throwing around these words like so
Right.
loosely now. So I think that we have to be very careful, because if we can come against people who disagree,
Yeah.
that definitely puts the power in the hands to create culture whatever way that person wants to define, or
Right.
that organization wants to define. And people would say that about people are turning it, it's becoming distorted about
Right.
the church, because we hold beliefs and we hold a standard. My question is that why is any person above not understanding, not denying themselves, and taking up their cross and following Christ?
Right.
Like the word, why is any, like I didn't get that pass. You didn't get that pass.
Yeah.
Nobody gets that pass.
Yeah.
So instead of asking, how can you ask me to do that? Asking God himself, like, how can I do that?
Right.
You show me.
Yeah.
You show me how this is even possible,
Yeah, that's so good. And man, just to wrap up, I know we did mention, if you're watching this from wherever you might be, but if you're at home and you're a part of a growth group that we do at LTL, where we just have different people gathering in different homes, different spaces, just to have conversation, just like this. And ours just so happens to be behind a camera, but we know that there are people that are meeting in homes and having that genuine conversation. And we would encourage, whether you're a part of a growth group or not, have these conversations around the table with your family. Get with a friend or somebody that you trust and ask some real tough question, and do some self-examination on, because even just reading through those 7, you automatically think like, oh, that whatever you think about them. But sometimes you might find yourself along the lines of some of these.
For sure.
And there's always room for growth, and there's always room for relationship, and just asking questions and talking it out with people that you love and that you trust. And so the first question is, what are the benefits of all generations learning from each other? And Pastor Lisa and I kind of dialogued that a little bit. And so if there is a dynamic in some of these groups, or with whoever you're at, for different age groups or age gaps, that's even better, because we can learn from each other and just kind of talk that out. The second one is, how can we be a positive influence in a cancel culture society? And so it's not, none of this stuff is to bring up politics, or to bring up differences, or to start quarrels. This is literally more of like, let's come together and see how we can, even in all of our differences, even in all of these points that we just talked about, how can we come together and just say, hey, like, we're not going to be a part of cancel culture.
How can we benefit people?
Right.
Like, how can we be a benefit to people? Yeah.
Shoot, like, how can we be a part of understanding culture, or
Right.
grace culture,
Right.
like conversation culture,
Come
if
on,
anything. So the last question would be, what are some intentional things we can do to better equip the next generation in a post-Christian society? And that just basically means everything we've been talking about, just certain things and beliefs that obviously don't line up with the Word of God. And we know that that's the time we're living in. And instead of, being disgruntled and complaining about it, let's equip ourselves, and let's have conversation, and let's move forward in that in a positive way, using all the tools, including social media, including whatever, all the tools that God has given us. Let's use those things to continue to propel ourselves forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's good conversations.
Good conversation. And so thank you so much, Pastor Lisa, for just answering some of these questions for us, and just, having conversation with me on this week's Midweek. But we love you guys, and we'll see you next week for another Midweek conversation. We hope you have an incredible week.